Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Washington, D.C. this week. And then Paris in July, visits that will decide the selection of the Indian Navy's next fighter. I'm Saurabh Joshi, you're watching StratPost NewsReel, and first, let's get the context. The Indian Navy is conducting a process to decide which fighter it should buy for its requirement of 26 aircraft. The choice is between two naval fighters, the French Dassault Rafale M and the US Boeing F-18 Super Hornet. Both aircraft demonstrated their capabilities to the Indian Navy last year, but it hasn't made a selection yet. The problem now is that the window of opportunity is closing for the Indian Navy to choose from the two aircraft or even keep the contest running until it makes its selection. This is because the US offer of Super Hornet fighters for the Indian Navy is expiring at the end of June, and the US government and Boeing are uncertain about extending that offer any further beyond this month. The reason? Industrial factors. The production of the Super Hornet is set to end by the close of 2026 after delivering around 800 aircraft to the US Navy alone. For context, this number is greater than the entire fighter fleet of the Indian Air Force. And besides everything else, the US government wants discussions on the potential sale of the Super Hornet to the Indian Navy during Prime Minister Modi's visit, the outcome of which will decide whether the offer is renewed. France is also keen on an order for the Rafale M from the Indian Navy and perhaps even additional orders for the aircraft from the Indian Air Force. But it's worth noting that manufacturer Dassault is unlikely to be able to deliver any new aircraft to either the Indian Navy or the Indian Air Force before the 2030s. This is again because of industrial factors. Dassault has a happy problem of a low production rate and massive numbers of pending orders. That means India would have to wait almost a decade for new fighters. Boeing, on the other hand, could deliver all 26 fighters to the Indian Navy in the 2026 timeframe. But if the US government decides to allow its offer to expire at the end of June, the Navy will no longer be able to keep the competition running. This will lead to a walkover by default. But this selection will then be one that is decided for the Indian Navy not by technical considerations or price comparisons or political compulsions, but industrial factors. And not only would it have only one aircraft left on offer, it would also have much reduced bargaining power during negotiations when the time comes. Most importantly, the Navy will be stuck waiting for an aircraft that will only be delivered to them in the 2030s, by which time the world will have changed many times over. That's why the Indian Navy could find the choice made for them between Washington, D.C. and Paris. This is not the first time that India has missed opportunities for adding major capabilities. India missed out on acquiring additional C-17 airlifters to add to its fleet of 10 aircraft after the production line closed down. The Indian Air Force wanted to acquire more aircraft, but even the unsold inventory of 10 aircraft dwindled to a single airlifter before the Indian Air Force could pick it up. It would like to acquire more C-17 aircraft from operators around the world, but hasn't had any luck. This is not surprising since no C-17 operator wants to give up a versatile and formidable capability that is no longer in production. Further down the road, a similar situation could also come up with the Indian Navy's P-8I maritime reconnaissance aircraft. The P-8I is manufactured on the Boeing 737NG production line. With orders for the P-8 aircraft moving to completion for most potential customers, Boeing plans to repurpose the line for the production of 737 MAX airliners. The window of opportunity for the Indian Navy to add more P-8I aircraft will also close over the next couple of years. But much before that, the Navy might end up being left with no fighter competition, no choice, and a long wait for new aircraft by the end of this month. I hope you found this edition of StratPost NewsReel useful. I'll be back with more in the next one.